I love actually greeting and welcoming people. It's one of my favorite things, and I'm here to tell you a little bit of a story about why that's so important to me. So I think I've told you that in my lifetime, I'm now somewhere around 70 in the number of addresses that I've lived at in my lifetime. Until I hit high school, I had not been to a single school for more than a year and a half, because we moved around so much. My parents were divorced and they both loved to travel and explore new places, so it meant we did too. And now, all of this sort of had its pluses and minuses. On the plus side, change comes really easy to me. It's, for me, not a problem to move from Seattle to Nashville to South Bend to here. It's sort of part of what I know how to do. For other people, that's a fairly frightening thing. But on the challenging side of that, particularly when I was younger, is that it's hard to feel like you belong anywhere. It's hard to feel like you put down roots. You know, whenever I was the new kid, they always separated my twin sister and I because they wanted us to meet other people. And my twin, she was the extrovert, so she always met people. But I was the introvert. And I always remember feeling sort of out of sorts, not knowing how to fit in. And it wasn't anybody's particularly fault. No kids were particularly mean to me or anything like that. But I remember eating a lot of lunches alone and being alone on the playground quite a lot. Now, I didn't really realize how this sort of affected me until I remember years ago, so years later, I'm in my 20s, and I started working for a company called Aquin. I think you've heard me talk about it a little bit before. It was my first sort of real job, you know, when you're out of college. I was out of grad school. It was full-time, there were benefits, but it felt real to me because I had a lot of responsibility. I was a recruiter, and my job was to bring in this wonderful talent and to help put them on jobs. In fact, the mission of the company was to help people find work, which was a great mission. I felt the weight of that, like, oh, yay, we're going to go do this. It's going to be wonderful. I remember I was training with a colleague, you know, for the first couple of weeks. I'd sit in, she'd do most of the talking. And then finally, it came to my turn. And I was going to be the one sort of in charge. I was going to be the one interviewing the person, looking at their portfolio and looking at their resume. Aquin specialized in graphic designers, so we had portfolios. It was usually a very long process that they went through in the interview with me. And so I was very excited about this. And I remember that morning, it must have been a Monday morning, and I got out my clipboard. I had all the stuff that I needed on my table, the interviewing table, all ready to go. And sure enough, Zach, our receptionist, buzzes me and says, "Sean, your 10 o'clock appointment is here." I'm like, oh, yay! This is so exciting. I'm just feeling that sense of like, oh yeah, here we go. This is it. And I remember bounding out to the reception area, and I had my clipboard with me with a resume on it and everything. And I'm going out there like, "Hi, I'm Sean!" And I remember stopping dead in my tracks. Because this woman was sitting on her chair, she had her portfolio on her lap, and she looked up at me and she was terrified. Absolutely terrified. And in that moment, you know, you have those crystallizing moments that come in your life. In a split second, I knew that I had incredible power. I had the power to totally ruin her day, to make her feel small and like nothing. Because she knows, you know, when you're being interviewed, right, you know, you're being judged. Or I had the power to make her day, whether or not I could even find her the work, to make her feel valuable and that she was worthy. I hope you know which choice I made. I vowed then on that anybody who came to me would feel that they were valuable and worthy. And that's part of how I've spent my ministry. And sure enough, that day, I remember I lowered my voice. I said, "Hi, I'm Sean. Welcome to Aquin. I'm so delighted to meet you. Please come back here to my office and we'll chat some about how we can find you work. And can I get you a cup of water?" And she left with a smile on her face. And that was my mission, I remember, at Aquin, to make sure that every person who came to me felt like they were worthy of. And that led into also my ministry about welcoming people. It's why I'm so passionate about it here, about welcoming newcomers and visitors into our space, because I believe that we do provide something as welcoming. I believe that Unitarian Universalism is a welcoming faith to all. Now, because this led into my ministry, it's also why I'm passionate about things like human rights, or marriage equality, immigration, or incarceration. All of these things, to me, have to do with how we treat one another and how to help people feel like they belong. This is why, actually, on the 18th, just about a week and a half ago, about 10 days ago, I got a call from Kent Doss, our minister down in Mission Viejo, and he says, Sean, there's a big rally going on really quick. There's a gentleman who's been taken by immigration, and his families are big activists within immigration rights. His name is Luis Bravo, and we're going to have a press conference, and they're looking for people to come out there. Can you come out? It's right here in Costa Mesa. So I remember thinking, oh, I've got so much to do, right? Everybody's always got so much to do. But I was like, no, this is to me, about welcoming people. So I dropped everything I had, and I went there, and I went to this press conference so that I could bring my voice to it. Now, immigration is a hugely complex issue. But what I've learned is that the top of my values is that people need to belong and feel welcome. That each person has dignity and worth. And for me, if a law doesn't uphold the dignity and worth of someone, then to me it isn't a just law, and civil disobedience, or the right of conscience in our principles, says that we're required to try to change that. This is how I feel about many of our immigration issues. Now, other people feel very differently. Some people feel very strongly about upholding the law, which is a good thing. It's part of my values. I'm not someone who likes to go out and break laws or anything like that. But no matter whether or not, but for some people that trumps other areas of saying, okay, welcoming and belonging may not be as high for them. Because for them, maybe to do otherwise, to break the law, is to invite chaos. Now, each of us is influenced by our experiences in the world, and they help set our values. Now, I value the law, but in a hierarchy, it falls second after helping people feel they have dignity and worth. So here was this young man who was actually trying to help the police. The immigration officials came to him. ICE came knocking on the door and said, we're looking for someone named Caesar. And they asked Luis if he knew him, and they asked him to step outside because they knew they can't come in the house. And he thought, oh, sure, I'll help out. And he said, no, I've never seen this guy, Caesar. I don't know him. They said, well, we'd like to see some ID. And when they did, they took him away for something that happened 2 years ago, which he had already actually dealt with and had paid his dues. So, but they can do that. And that was, to me, not respecting the dignity and worth of that person. And as his brother's running down the street after him that morning saying, where are you taking him? Why are you taking him? They said, go back in the house or we're going to arrest you too. They just wanted to know where he was going. So now each of us has something that we're passionate about. And we're passionate often about because of the experiences that we have. I invite you to consider, what are the things that you're passionate about? And those experiences that have given you your values about whatever issue it is that you feel about. And it doesn't have to be civil rights. It could be the environment. It could be about education. It could be about the arts. Just take a few moments now to just take a deep breath and think about what experience influenced you, maybe especially as children. That's when our values are formed. And take a moment in silence to consider. When you start thinking about these things, how you were formed and what your values are, you may find yourself that it's linked in some way to our principles. Actually, can you switch to the next slide there? You might look at these principles. So for me, the principle that resonated the absolute most to me when I first became a UU was our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all. That to me meant about welcoming, about helping people belong. Because when you recognize that someone has worth and dignity, you're seeing something in them. So you might ask yourself, which of these principles sort of sparks an interest? There may be more than one, but is there one that maybe links closely with what your values are and those passions that you have? As we explore our principles this year, each of you most likely has an issue or maybe many issues that you're passionate about. I think that many of you are already living out your passions in the world. In fact, you might be amazed at how many people are out there here in this congregation who are doing amazing work. But what I found is, as I was brainstorming with some people on the worship committee about this, and sending me some ideas, is how many people do things that we don't necessarily know about, and how many people do things that are in different ways. So for example, you've got people who have dedicated their lives, particularly after they're retired, to their justice issues that they feel passionately about. For example, most people here know Bertie and Charlie, right? They're involved with the ACLU, with our AIDS team ministry, with the Orange County detainees. I don't think that there's an issue they probably don't know about here in Orange County. There's Pat McCulley with the Círculo de Amigas. Some of you know Jan Rovin. She does Donate to Life because her son passed away, and she feels this is a great way to connect and live his life out. You've got Ava Lou Goodwin Noriega. She works on political campaigns. She's involved in senior organizations that pushes for healthcare reform. There are some of you that you may know that also have professions that help them in the world. I think of teachers, for example, like Margaret Armstrong, who teaches in Compton deliberately. You've got Maria Good, Elizabeth Kilchor, even Sharon Ball, who's a former teacher. I think there's actually a lot of, how many people here are teachers? Oh, here he goes, of course. Look at all these teachers in here. This is what I call the other ministry, because you don't do it for the big bucks. You do it because it means something to you. You've got Nancy Lockery, so in her job at Taller San Jose, which helps at-risk youth people gain skills and jobs. You've got Kathleen McFarland. She runs the Family Resource Center and Regional Center of Orange County. Amanda Horak. She loves animals and she works at a doggy daycare and does Reiki on animals too. There's people who have then commitments also outside of their job. You've got Richard O'Neill, who works in Second Harvest Food Bank. Bob Kruder, who delivers meals for ATM. Jacques Kilchor, he's the coordinator for our local chapter of Amnesty International. I had no idea. He sits on the board. I had no idea. Sherry Lotion is involved with gang prevention programs in southern LA. Marcia Hackett has been a docent for 17 years at Bauer Museum, helping educate children and the public. Michael Lundholm, right here, one of our youth, is secretary of the Interact Club at Ocean View High School, and they've raised over $3,000 to fight polio. Is it Mabby or maybe? Maybe. So, Beth's wife, she's a speaker at PFLAG, telling her story to people. Jeannie Chris, she's a court-appointed special advocate for abused children. Karen Anderson does volunteer counseling and support for people with transgender issues, domestic violence, and abuse. Barbara and Alexandria Baracol work with the Orange County detainees, among many other things. Elaine Diorio, I love it. She actually helps abandoned pets find homes. She's immediately on it. Those are just some of the people in this congregation who are living out their values. Something came up with them that made them want to go out and make change. Then, of course, there's everybody here who volunteers here at the church, because this church has a way of helping and lift up and help change the values in this community. There are people who do things when they can. For example, at our 2004 Long Beach Pride Parade, we had all sorts of people from a lot of people in the choir, Caroline Scott and her kids, and you've got Jan Mabey and Beth Syverson, Adam Goldman, who's back there in the corner, plus with his mother and his sister, I believe it's Karen and Jennifer, Tim Murphy, Alexandria Baracol, and Michael Lundholm was there too. You've got Amanda Harak, who does occasional walks for AIDS. You've got Catherine Martin with Judith Stamper in the back. They're organizing the cough walk right now. I encourage you all to sign up and walk. And Catherine Tatis, also in the back there, knitting away, because what she does, she knits cap for cancer patients and donates them to Knots of Love. And Barbara Schilling, she also makes hats actually for premature babies in the NICU in Anaheim. She was funny, she was there as a harpist one day and she saw the basket of only a few hats in it. They said, oh, we're always in need of hats for our preemie babies. So she taught herself how to knit and then knits those. Then there are people who simply live out their values in the world. How many people here are vegetarian because of their values? Yep. Michael Lundholm, I love what he said. He sent me this email and he said, besides doing this, he said, I just try to live with kindness. Boy, I wish we all had that. That's awesome. There's, of course, Michael Scott, who does just that. I love, Catherine sent me something about him that he uses our script. He takes our script and he goes out, and if he just sees someone in need, he gives it to them. And sometimes a little bit of cash, and talks to them like they have dignity and worth. There are people here who give rides to those who can no longer drive. Randy Copel, Catherine Martin, Jeannie Chris, Sonny Harper, all of them offer rides to help people come here to church. These are just the ones that I came up with. There are so many things that people here do, that we are living out our principles here and now. I believe that each person does what they can, and they do it with great love. That's why you keep doing it, right? You do it with great love. That's what Mother Teresa was talking about in our opening words. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it's not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. We all go through times in our lives when we can do more, and other times when we have to do less, and other times when we need other people to be there for us. Now, our mission statement and our principles, these are ideals. They ask us the question, what can you do to make the world better? That's the role of ideals. They ask something of us. Now, our country, I don't know if you're aware of this, our country, the United States, is one of the few countries in the world that was founded on ideals. Right, in our Declaration of Independence, we said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all, I'm going to take out the gender there, that all are created equal, and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those are great ideals to lift up, to build a country on. Are we there yet? Are we done as Americans? Have we created a place where all are equal? That everybody has life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? Well, maybe all are equal, but by law. But you have only to read the paper to see how people of color are treated unequally in this country. Do we all have equal access to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? What if our Declaration of Independence said something like this? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that some people get to have a lot of freedom, but not so much others. They still have to watch what they wear, how they talk, or even walk down the street. We all have the right to life, but we'll kill those that do bad things, and we won't help them change. We'll just lock them away and send them back to where they can't actually live. And of course, people can pursue happiness in a way that they want, no matter if it crushes the happiness of others or even their ability to feed their children. What if these were the ideals that our country was founded on? Are we done? Yeah. We're done! We don't have to work any harder. We can sit back and relax. That's what ideals do, is that they keep us reaching. They put a high bar out there so that we will try to reach them. Now, our religion also has ideals. That wasn't necessarily founded on an ideal, but it kind of was. Originally, we had beliefs, right? The Unitarians believed in the unity of God, and therefore Jesus was man. The Universalists believed that everyone was saved, that the gracious love of God. But when they merged, they realized they didn't have a unifying belief, but they had ideals about how they wanted to be in the world. And that's 1961, after they merged. 1981, they created these 7 principles to say, we need something to help us be better than who we are already. And they ask a ton of us. For example, what if our principles said something like, we affirm and promote the inherent dignity and worth of all people who think like we do. Or maybe, we like the democratic process, but you don't have to listen to everyone, just vote already. How about we affirm and promote the independence of all existence from one another. Do whatever you want. Our faith, it asks us to be missionaries. It asks us to live out our values and our ideals in the world. And each of us has a way that we live them out. Some are more direct than others. And I'm willing to bet that none of us here do it perfectly, or do it as much as we'd like to. But that's what ideals are for. They ask us to reach. If we did it perfectly, then we'd be done, right? So how do you live out your principles in the world? That's what our principles are asking. It's what our mission state's asking. It's what your church is asking. And if you don't know necessarily, then give it time. We've got all year to talk about it. Find different ways. I think it can be your profession. It can be a commitment to a cause. Volunteering, the way that you interact and treat people on a daily basis. I've known people who volunteer, who do amazing amounts of time of volunteer, but then treat others terribly. And I've known others who are busy raising children and taking care of grandparents, but when they greet each person as if they are holy and precious. How we treat one another, how we encourage this wonderful nation to live up to its ideals, it's up to us. And it's not about who does more, it's about each of us doing what we can. It's like in our story today, right? Some people had something to give, some had more to give, some had less, some had to take a little. Each of us does our part, and that's when miracles happen. And that's why Luis Bravo was actually released 4 hours later, because so many people called into the immigration services that they said, would you please stop having people call? He's going to be out by dinner, and he was out by lunch. This is the only way our world has changed, is when we create our own miracles, when we come together, when people put their love into action. May it be so, blessed be, and amen.